I had an interesting situation occur, where I was discussing with someone Jesus, about Jesus. And this person was born again Christian, and though the person was totally committed that Jesus was Lord, like we see on all of the bumper stickers, he still felt that we had to fight this war in Iraq. And I said, well, then you can't be for Jesus. You can support this war or whatever it is, but you can't be with Jesus. And he had a very difficult time with that, you see. And it's something that people probably everywhere have a very difficult time with it, because probably the most support that you'll ever find for this type of thing in wars comes from Christian people. That for some reason they're very militaristic, and which means there is no such thing as Christianity. It doesn't exist. And I'm simply saying that because the Jesus who is the hero of Christianity says, hey, if somebody offends you or hurts you, you've got to forgive them. And the guy says, well, how many times? What if it's over? He said, well, 7 times 70. That means you got to go 490 times. It's not literal. But he's saying it doesn't make any difference. What anybody does to you, you have to forgive them every time. And he says, if somebody comes up and asks you, hey, I want your shirt, he says, give me your coat too. And this is the kind of guy that is portrayed in the Bible that nobody pays a bit of attention to. He was the ultimate pacifist. He wouldn't break a bruised reed. I mean, that's how. I know Joan gets a little concerned with me at night because I have some friends. I don't want your, but this is true. I have friends who are slugs. Now I don't know if have you ever seen slugs? They're little crawly things, and at the end of their heads they get a little. And I watch them, and I just marvel at it. I said, where the heck are you going? And they go and they meet another slug, and the two of them walk, or they slug off together, and I think it's terrific. But you see, because inside of that thing, which we are so offended by and have so much trouble with, is some kind of an intelligence. Oh, yes, an intelligence that is only required for that much, but still there is. And so here you have Jesus, and he looked at such a thing that he wouldn't, you have a bruised reed, he wouldn't break it. This is the philosophy. And so his philosophy becomes, if somebody comes up and punches you on the jaw, you're supposed to turn your head and say, hit this side. Well, that's not practical. Of course it's not. And it's like it's deliberately not practical as a message that trying to do anything as a physical person is impossible to try to measure up to those standards. You can't. And so basically what it says is that you've got to find some different way. You've got to no longer depend on your brain. You've got to no longer depend on your physical strength and your abilities. Because you're not going to do any of these things. If somebody punches you, you're either going to swing back or run or get a gun or something. And if somebody asks you if they want your coat, you're going to call the cops. And I mean, this is the way normal things are. The Jesus philosophy is totally abnormal, but it's intentionally that way to try to get people to understand, look, you have to go into yourself, you have to shut down that self, because there is no way that you're going to be able to do the things that I say to do. But if you don't do them, then, I'm not Lord. So, stop throwing that around and sticking it on your bumper stickers. Everybody does that. When did you find the Lord? They never have. Because they're not that way. At the one time they're saying, oh, the Lord, and at the next time they're saying, let's go and bombs away, and let's start a nuclear war so Jesus will come back on a white horse and all that stuff. So there's a terrible problem that people run into, and I really do feel for them, because when you address that issue with them, they kind of stare at you. I said, well, Jesus, he can't be your Lord if you support war. It's impossible. Now, you can go ahead and be support the war, but you can't say, well, I'm a Christian at the same time. It can't be. The two, it's an oxymoron. The two don't jive at all. Say, and so there you have a problem that's a very practical, physical, real problem. No one can do the things that Jesus says, and yet they all say, he's Lord, and he says in the Bible, why do you call me Lord, and you don't do the things I tell you to do? Because they don't understand the source of the teaching, and the reason for it is to get you not to depend on yourself in this physical world, but to drive yourself inside, where you make touch in here with that higher realm of what we call cosmic consciousness, or the mind of what God really is. Now, having said that, you see the nightmare that is going on in the world and all around us, and everywhere you look, the people that are battling one another are all religious people. They are all fundamentalists, man. Whether they're a Christian fundamentalist or a Jew fundamentalist or a Muslim fundamentalist or a Sunni or a Shiite or a Kurd or whatever it is, they'll blow you up in a second. They'll blow a plane, fly a plane into your building, won't even think twice about it. And they all leave Bible scriptures, and they've all got scriptures from the Bible or the Quran or something to prove that they're right. And yet, of course, I don't belong to any organized group, including this one. And I don't recommend anybody join any organized group, but if I was going to pick one organized group that is Christian, fully Christian, then it would be the Buddhists. They're the only ones that follow what Jesus said. See? So what do we do then? I mean, we have all of this fighting, all of this killing. You got people starving all over the place. You got kids dying in different remote places. You got people down in New Orleans as an example to us of what happens if poverty, people get hurt, nobody. And so what do? The point is that since you can't do anything physically, it has to be done. Something has to be done for us. And so you reach a point where things start to happen. Things start to change. And right now, if you're really paying attention, strange and bizarre things are happening all over the place. Things that, I was speaking a minute ago to Stephen, I said, every time you pick up when you look at NASA or any of the, science or astronomical places, the first thing you see the scientists saying, this is a shock. We've never seen anything like this before. We don't know what's going on. There's strange things happening. And so you see like a movement where the earth will then soonly be consumed in this new type of power that will force the mind to change. It'll shake a lot of people. You'll see financial institutions and all of that kind of stuff will go down, and a lot of people are going to have a terrible, terrible, terrible time with it. But it's the only way that nature can kind of do a course correction on the existence of Earth. So as you read the newspapers or you watch the TV or you're on the internet or whatever, your attention should be to these things which say, well, what in the heck's going on here? This is strange, or I heard this, or what does this mean, or whatever. And it should prompt a discussion among people. The only ones that it's going to interest are people like yourself, those of you who are sitting here, and those of you who are watching this thing on the television. And the reason that is because other people outside who don't have any interest on that inner spiritual higher realm of the mind are just going to swing out and shoot and bomb and all of this stuff and keep their fingers crossed and hope the stock market doesn't. And they go on in this stress-filled thing, and at the same time totally neglect the worldwide poverty and all of the things that go on elsewhere. Say. Now, for many years here, we've been talking about these things, and we've been talking about changes that are going to come upon the earth. And I have people come up to me many years ago and say, well, when do you think this stuff's going to happen? And they don't say that anymore because it is happening. And I've showed you the Eta Carina and the supernova and things like that. But so many strange things have happened that you'll find more and more people are beginning to look. And when they do, they find that indeed this earth is in the throes of a gigantic change of some kind. Over the past few weeks, we've studied various cases that one would have to be considered strange and worthy of note. And the reason is, even though you can look up Ripley's Believe It or Not, or these things are all making headlines in the newspapers and on TV and so forth and so on. One of the stories, and I'll just go through a couple of them real quick. One of the stories concerns someone up in a nursing home in Rhode Island who has this tremendous spiritual ability to know when somebody is going to die. And this person immediately goes and lies on the bed with the person who's dying until the person dies, as if making that person comfortable as she passes over. The fellow at Brown University, who's head of all the medical up there, said that he takes care of that nursing home facility, and he said that it's very difficult to call people when somebody's going to die. He said because sometimes they have to come from another country, or they have to come from California or someplace. And he says sometimes I'm wrong. He said, but this person is never wrong. And so this person is so spiritually high and has such an ability to carry or move the people who are departing to the other side, that he received a plaque from the state of Rhode Island, and we want to show you. Hit what?
I didn't touch it on
Yeah?
this active update. It just popped up on it.
Okay. All right, excuse me. We don't need an active update. Just bear with me for... Huh?
Remind me later.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I hope it goes off of there. Okay. All right, now we can show you the picture of this person, and there he is. There he is. Now, the Pope can't do this. Billy Graham can't do this. There's no ministers, there's no priests that can do it. But this cat knows when people are going to die, jumps on their bed, and stays with them until they depart. And they were saying, the doctor up there said that one time, 2 people were dying at the same time. He said, and you stood in the hallway and you'd see the cat going in and going out, running back and forth. And it's an amazing thing. And they said that the cat has never, ever been wrong. But, it's such a strange thing to know. And here is an animal that has a capacity that connects to what we call God in a life or death and a movement to, and has a closer, obvious connection than the highest religious people in the world. Can't do a thing like that. So it's strange, and it gets played all over the country. See, and so you look into the eyes and you say, well, I'd like to adopt that cat, but what if he jumps on your bed? But this is the thing, and this story made it. And the other thing about this cat, doesn't like people. When they gave him the plaque for comforting the dying and caring for them till they got over to the other side, the doctor from Brown University came in to congratulate, picked him up, and the cat bit him. And the cat's as if to say, I don't have time for foolishness. I have to make my rounds. We don't have a picture here. We had one the last time we showed, but he makes his rounds just like a doctor did. So there's so much documentation. Then there's another story. There is another story. And we went through this one. This is a little girl in a remote village in India. And her name is Yolanda or Yonganda or something like that. And they're not educated people in her family. They don't know and things like that. But she has kept saying, I guess it went on from the time she could talk, that she used to be in the sky and she was killed in the sky. And her name is, and I'm trying to think of her name. Her name is Awana Gawana. We'll just use that because I can't think of what her name is. And so nobody knows who it is, see? But she said, yes, I was killed in the sky and my name was such and such. Well, the name of the person who she said she was happened to be this person right here, who was an astronaut from India who was killed when that ship came in and blew up on its way back in. And they said, there's no way they said that this child could know who that was. All she said was she was in the sky and she was killed and her ship was hit by ice or a chunk of ice or something like that. And she knew her name, and it was this lady's name who was the astronaut. So, you can't anymore. You see, what gets to me is people say, I don't know if I believe that. But yet they'll walk into church, check their brains at the door, and believe that snakes talk and ladies have babies and all of this stuff. It's just amazing. And then there was the story of another little boy, and this little boy from Glasgow, Scotland. And he would cry and scream that he had to go back to his mother because his mother would be missing him, and he had to go, and he would never let this down until his mother in Scotland finally called Dr. Jim Tucker, who's from the University of Virginia and studies children who claim to have been living in a previous life. And so Dr. Tucker came over. The little boy said he lived in a white house by the bay on the Isle of Barra, where his family had never been, and his name was Robertson, and he cried and cried that his mother didn't know where he was. And so they took him finally to the Isle of Barra with Dr. Tucker. He flew over there. And they came and they searched for a long time, and they finally found a little white house by the bay, and they looked at the records, and many, many, many years ago, a family named Robertson lived there. So there's not much you can do when you see things like this, except say, well, I can't challenge it. And I don't think we should do that anymore, because the scientists in the world today are talking about parallel universes and the fact that we have twins or clones or whatever you want to call it living in parallel universes. And so all of these stories are finding their way into the mainstream media and press, and people are unable to comprehend it because nobody believes this stuff. I talked about, and went on for some time, Sir William Crookes back in the 19th century in Old England. And this guy was a brilliant scientist, He perfected the first cathode ray tube and took the first X-ray picture ever of his wife's hand. I mean, the guy he had all kinds of awards and medals. But what did he do that got him in so much trouble? He said that he brought back from the dead a woman by the name of Katie King. He took pictures of him standing with Katie King. He said he had a doctor there taking her pulse and all of this stuff, and everybody thought he had gone nuts, and they brought him to court, and the scientists and the religious people, and they're saying, Sir William, are you saying that it's possible for a woman to come back from the dead and you could take her blood pressure? And he said, no, I didn't say it was possible. I said it happened. Well, and his credentials are such. And that's what I look at. If I'm going to take a story, I know this kid was accompanied by Dr. Jim Tucker of the University of Virginia. And I mean, if I have credible witnesses to these things, you talk about, parallel universes where there is another you living in another universe, and you know, it blows your head away. It couldn't be possible. But yet you'll take an Einstein emeritus professor at Princeton University, Paul Steinhardt, and he says, hey, parallel universes do exist, and they're more bizarre than any science fiction writer could ever conceive of. There's another you somewhere. And you know how you can prove it? You can prove it when you go to bed. Because when you go to bed, your brain separates from your body, and the next thing you know, you're in some kind of an adventure. That's not a dream. That's you actually involved in a parallel universe. You actually doing something in that other universe. See? And once again, you'll say, well, look at me. Oh, this guy talks about... No, I don't. I'm talking about what Steinhardt at Princeton says. I'm talking about what Max Tegart at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology says. I'm talking about what David Deutsch of Oxford University says. There are such things. But we go to church. And so we don't know about the real life, the reality of what goes on. And these are true things. These are things that are real. These things... When we see things like this and we hear things like this, it seems to bring us closer to the realization that what we thought we knew, we really didn't know. Then we look at the feelings of some of these scientists, and I study them concerning the reality of other parallel universes and so forth and so on. And what do we find? They did a survey of the top scientists and quantum physicists in the world. And they said to them, wait a minute, are you going to tell, do you believe there are parallel universes and we are in them? I mean, copies of us are in them? And so they took a survey. And look at how it came out. It said that when they took the survey, a poll of 72, 58% said it's true, 13% said it could be, and 11 had no opinion. So if you took the 58 that said it's true and the 13 that said it could be, you got 71%. See? I say, well, how is it possible that another me could be living in another universe doing the same things or doing different things? Well, it's very simple. Well, it's not very simple, but it's I can make it very simple. What it is that every atom has a twin. There's two of every atom. One atom can be in two places at the same time. You see? Albert Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. And when you move this atom, if the other one is over the other side of the universe, it will move in the opposite direction. Like touching a spider's web. See? And yet we go to church, and what do they tell you there about this stuff? Nothing. We're talking about a concept that really would be considered spiritual reality. You know that there are even scientists now who are saying that one day it will be possible for you to enter into a parallel universe and find yourself, knock on the door, introduce yourself to yourself, and sit down and have a conversation. And what would you say to yourself? The way you're looking at me is exactly, these are bizarre things. But this isn't being taught by religious people. It's not being taught by New Age people. It's not being taught by gurus. It's being taught by science. Because the unseen world of the quantum is something mysterious, but it's real. So the existence of other worlds that can't be seen visibly, but exist in a strange realm of consciousness, are just as real as you are sitting here. That's what every single person sitting here has had family members who have died, yet not one of them have died. Just the body died. They went right into that other existence, that next existence where they've always been. It's just like you go to sleep and you've never been to sleep. There has not been 1 second in your existence that you've been to sleep. Not one. Your body sleeps, you don't. That's why when you go to sleep, you're going off into some amazing adventure somewhere. You know, tonight, you're going to go to bed? No, you're not. Your body's going to bed. You're going out. You're going to have a heck of a time sometimes. It gets pretty amazing, to say the least. But what to me is a bizarre thing about all this is that for all of our lives, I know all my life when I was growing up, we flocked to religions, and people have flocked to religions around the world and listened to people speaking of devils and demons and heaven and hell and angels and things that are absolutely not real, but were simply concocted to make a very profitable superstition, which then became the foundation of our culture. And that's why you never hear these scientists speaking out in the newspapers, or they don't tell anybody this stuff. Why? I mean, you sit down with you could sit down with the most brilliant physicists in the world, like Stephen Hawking, you know, the guy that has all those physical problems. But I mean, you wouldn't believe him. And I mean, the other you in a parallel universe looks like you, talks like you, is you, has the same name as you, has the same thoughts as you. So it never ends. It goes on and on and on, infinity. So, I mean, the point is that when a person actually dies, it's the same thing as if you go to bed tonight. Only thing is, what you consider a dream, it's there. You're doing stuff. I mean, you just go on, continue. How could it be that we have allowed ourselves to let religion and all of these mythological tales they took literally become the basis of our culture? And the reason and how it can be is what the mass mind does when it lives in fear. We've seen it displayed beautifully over the last few years. Oh, the Iraqis are coming over and they're going to attack us with nuclear weapons. And then you start a war with them, and they got guys with sneakers on pickup trucks with a machine gun. I mean, but we get afraid. And so the person that tells us to be fearful, we follow him because we think, oh, he knows how to keep us safe, see? It's the same thing with religion. They do the exact same thing. You're going to hell, pitchfork with this. Demons are going to chase you around and you're going to be on fire. So you better come in and give me 10% of your money and then everything will be okay. And we do. Because we're afraid. See? So we're told things that are not true, and then we agree to go to war, and we put on our helmets and raise our flags, and we hurt people and we attack people who are totally innocent and did nothing to us, as of those people over there in Iraq. But what happens is we get convinced that what we've been told is real. We say that those people over there are terrorists. They say we're the devil, and what have you got? You got two devils that are fighting each other. And we're in the middle of it, and innocent people from here and there get called up to do the fighting for them. And so you get, one of the interesting things you want to do, I don't know if you've had any family members who've ever been in a nursing home or who had dementia or something like that, Alzheimer's, things like that. And of course, these are bodily things. The person can no longer use the body in the same way that if your car throws a rod, you could sit there trying to drive it, but you can't. A person who's inside of a demented, a brain-damaged body is trying to drive it, but they can't. It's thrown a rod or whatever you want to say. It can't be used. But, when we get into reality, I know my brother, he had dementia, and he was down in a nursing home before he passed away. When I went down there, I go around talking to these people, and some pretty weird stuff. But as you think more and more and more, the question is, like, say, a person with schizophrenia who is talking to somebody who's not there. Now you have to, when you know about parallel universes and people in other places in parallel universes, you have to stop and think, maybe the person is there. And you have to stop and think, does the damage or the change in the brain allow that person inside to see things into other realms? I know my brother told me he had visits from my sister, my other brother, my father, and all these things. People have been dead a long time. And of course, you look at them. But the more and more and more you understand the electronics in this thing called the brain like a computer, and you wonder, maybe when they get to that point where they don't seem to function here, they're simply functioning. The cat. Let's think about the cat. No. Let's say you go into that nursing home, and there's a person sitting there, a little old lady, and she's, you want to play checkers? And nobody knows about the cat. And she says to you, hey, see that cat? Yeah, that cat knows when people are going to die. And that cat gets up and lays in bed with them and takes them to the other side. You know what you would say? Come on, you want to play checkers? Because you would say, oh, she's out of touch with reality. But no, she's not out of touch with reality. She's talking about something real. You and I would be out of touch with reality. So you see, it all depends. Are they really talking to people? Are those people really there? Are they somehow now able to see into parallel universes because of the fact that, the brain has changed? Now we go into one step beyond. As we discussed this last time, and then there's a couple of really interesting things. But we go into one step beyond here. This is really, we're getting to the ultra bizarre. It's one thing to be talking about parallel universes and things that may be real in the conscious field, although that's difficult. But now something far stranger is happening. Take a look at this from the Times Online. Dust comes alive in space. Dust comes alive. Tonight or tomorrow when you're sweeping out the corner in your room, you may be sweeping grandma out the door. You don't know who these people are. Wait a minute, what am I? I'm even talking like dust aren't people, dust is dust. Well, let's look. Scientists have discovered that inorganic material can take on the characteristics of living organisms in space, a development that could transform views of alien life. An international panel from the Russian Academy of Sciences, the Max Planck Institute in Germany, the University of Sydney found that galactic dust could form spontaneously into helixes and double helixes, and that the inorganic creations had memory and the power to reproduce themselves. The dust suddenly became alive and had the power to reproduce and had memory, and it formed the helix, which is, the double helix of the DNA. So what are you going to do with that? Now you go out of here, you're going to tell people what I said. Oh, well, you must have been the fork the river. But look. See? So in other words, when things are happening, they're real. And what's the Bible say? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And I mean, it wasn't even like, it's not like they take the dust and put stuff in it and put it in the microwave and, stir it. No, it just comes alive. See? Just sit back. If you look at that, just sit back and think. Stuff that has no life in it can suddenly form into something alive and be able to remember. I don't know what dust would want to remember, but it's able to remember. And then it's able to reproduce. It meets Mrs. Dust or Julie Dust or whatever, and they have little dusties. Talk about alien life. I mean, Christians have trouble saying, we're not descended from monkeys. No, now it's dust. And well, what about that chair you're sitting in? If suddenly something starts grabbing around your waist, you'll know it's alive. You see, remember those cheap movies they had years ago, the black and white movies, the the tomato plants and all this stuff? Maybe. Of course, someone would say it's ridiculous. But the Bible, and I showed this, is very sensible now because of look at the statements in the Bible. And the Lord God formed man out of the dust. Well, it must be because now up in space, dust is coming to life. In the sweat of your face till you return to the ground, for out of it dust you are, and dust you'll return. So who are all these? We had a friend that was named Dusty, remember? Who are these people? Look at this one. Tell Aaron to stretch out the rod, hit the dust of the land, and it will become lice. In other words, just like up there, the dust will change from something inorganic to something organic. And then in Job, remember you made me as the clay, will you bring me into dust? So there's a lot of references in the Bible to dust. And now there's the references in the year 2007 from scientists at NASA about dust coming to life. That has, it had to be, that would be regarded as nonsense until, but see, there's some people that haven't been here before. So just let tell you, probably one of the classics that started me into this, when we talk about nonsense. Here's the beginning of the Bible. God took a rib out of Adam and made Eve. That would mean women are made from spare ribs. Well, fine. I don't believe it. I never believed it. I said it was a lot of baloney. And when I was a little kid, they threw me out of a Catholic school. Get out. This is true. And they shipped me off to an orphan school, where I did all right. But I just didn't believe this stuff. But now I find out that if you take an electron out of an atom, you create a positive ion. You take that electron and put it in another atom, it creates a negative ion. You've now created positive, negative, yin, yang, male, female. Atom. All life began with the splitting of the atom. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Certainly. But if I was to go into a church and say that, they'd say I'm a cult. Because they want to go the spare ribs route. That makes more sense to them. But when you talk about dust coming to life, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's kind of bizarre because when the dust comes to life, it takes on a form. And this is what happened. A helix, shaped like a spring, and we'll look at it here. And it's a helix, that's a form, see? And it also forms a double helix, right here. That's you and me. The dust takes on the DNA characteristics of a double helix, which is the same as you and me. And so the living pattern that develops when something comes to life that was not alive is the same living pattern that makes up you and me, the double helix DNA. And it's the same pattern that forms in the cosmos. One thing happened in the cosmos that scientists at NASA and all over the world had to stop and say, somebody did this. It was impossible for this to happen. The DNA double helix showed up as a nebula in the universe. And there it is. You see it? They said it couldn't happen. It's impossible. And the scientists said it had to be done intentionally because there's no way that something that wasn't intelligent behind it could have made that happen. There has to be a mind to create something like this. And now we're finding out that this dust not only could form that DNA pattern that is us, but also showed that it had memory. And the subject of reality now takes another monumental step when we consider the creation of life. I don't know if you're ready for this. I don't know if the people are ready for this, and I don't think they are. But when I read what I'm going to tell you, I think of a poem by Joyce Kilmer. You know, nowadays people would really wonder about a guy named Joyce. You know, I never thought about it, but a guy named Joyce went on into it. But anyhow, he had a beautiful poem, and it was called Trees. And the one part, he said, poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Well, not only a tree, but what about humans and animals? Of course, no one can question the fact that only God could possibly create human or animal life, right? Take a look. By the Associated Press, news from Washington, around the world, a handful of scientists are trying to create life from scratch, and they're getting close. Experts expect an announcement within 3 to 10 years from someone in the now little-known field of wet artificial life. Creation of life out of things that are not alive, that are material things. Look at that. It's going to be a big deal. That's putting it mildly. And everybody's going to know about it, said Mark Badu, Chief Operating Officer of Protel Life of Venice, Italy, one of those in the race. We're talking about a technology that could change our world in pretty fundamental ways, in fact, in ways that are impossible to predict. One of the leaders in the field, Jack Sostek, Harvard Medical School, predicts that within the next 6 months, scientists will report evidence that the first steps, creating a cell membrane, is not a big problem. Scientists are using fatty acids in that effort. Sostek also optimistic about the next step, getting nucleotides, the building blocks of DNA, to form a working genetic system. And now we'll look at this last one. And it says, Bedeau said, there are legitimate worries about creating life that could run amok. But there are ways of addressing it, and it will be a long time before that's a problem. When these things are created, they're going to be so weak, it'll be a huge achievement if you can keep them alive for an hour. But then them getting out and taking over, them. Who are they? Getting out. Oh, what a movie we could make. Never in our imagination could this happen. Oh, don't tell me such stuff. That's like saying Saddam had WMDs. Oh, yes. Them getting... Friends, Romans, lend me your ears. People are using Band-Aids and oil and stuff and making living things. Who is the creator now? And the last sentence really makes my hair stand up. Them getting out. Can you imagine a scientist coming to his boss? George, they're out. They're out and about. Remember that what they're talking about is creating life made by man. It's alive, it thinks. And you know what that means? That when they took that stuff and made a living thing out of it, there has to be some kind of consciousness in it. Huh? It found it. Where did that come from? Could they get out and take over? Thus comes to life, and now man is making life out of things that are not alive. Over and over and over, you and I, we've talked about bizarre, strange things happening. And we've discussed supernova 1987A, Eta Carina, along with NASA's predictions of super explosions that are going to come from both of them. And I have proposed to you that Eta Carina is the seventh angel of the book of Revelation, and supernova 1987A is the seventh seal. And I haven't gone outside of the Bible too often in matters of predictions or prophecies unless something happens to suggest a connection. and then I'll look at it. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Mayans, M-A-Y-A-N-S. A lot of people would write me and tell me about the Mayans. I guess they're called M-A-Y-A-N-S, Mayans. Because they gave a prophecy that something was going to happen to change this world in 2012, which is 5 years from now. This prophecy had been running for a long time. And I never got involved in it because, I didn't see anything from science or any scientists that gave it any credibility. So I never commented. There was nothing really to connect it to. Let me just show you about the Mayan, what they are. The Mayan is a member of an American Indian people of Yucatan and Belize and Guatemala who had a culture which reached its peak between AD 300 and 900, characterized by outstanding architecture and pottery and astronomy. Mayans had a system of writing and an accurate calendar. So it was something special in this group. And even that, though, I said, well, they have credentials as far as astronomy and the calendar. And they had this prophecy written that was to culminate in 2012. Now, understand something. It wasn't saying in 2012 something's going to happen. It's saying that by 2012, this massive change will happen upon the earth. And it's happening now. And that's what I've been telling you about Eta Carinae and supernova, that this is an ongoing thing. These are visitations of gamma rays and all the stuff that are hitting the earth, and they're going to change things drastically. But let me show you the prophecy that comes out of the Mayans about 2012, and it says this. And this is the ninth and last sign. You will hear of a dwelling place in the heavens above the earth that shall fall with a great crash. It will appear as a blue star. Very soon after this, the ceremonies of my people will cease. So, that's it. And as I said, I've seen that many, many times, and nothing ever brought me to say anything special about it because it wasn't a scientific. Now, if you study that prophecy, they don't speak of a destruction, but rather a destruction of the mindset to change things away from the hard and violent mindset that we have been living in. And that I've told you that I believe those changes will emanate from supernova 1987 and Eta Carinae. Their prophecy was formed around the appearance of a blue star. And why then am I talking about it now? Let's go to NASA, the Aeronautical Space Administration. And they say in Media Telecom, August 15th, Galaxy Evolution Explorer, astronomers are scheduled to announce new findings about a star unlike any seen before at a media teleconference Wednesday, August the 15th. Of course, that's already passed, and I'm about to show you what they talked about. A star unlike any seen before. That's interesting because of what they said about this. So let's see. Now this is what they said. Speeding bullet star leaves enormous streak across the sky. NASA's Galaxy Evolution Explorer has spotted an amazingly long comet-like tail behind a star, streaking through space at supersonic speeds. The star, named Mira after the Latin word wonderful, has been a favorite of astronomers for about 400 years. It is a fast-moving older star called a red giant that sheds massive amounts of surface material. And then it says, the space-based Galaxy Evolution Explorer scanned the popular star during its ongoing survey of the entire sky in ultraviolet light. Astronomers noticed what looked like a comet with a gargantuan tail. In fact, material blowing off Mira is forming a wake of 13 light years, or about 20,000 times the average distance of Pluto from the Sun. Nothing like this has ever been seen before around a star. Now it's 2007. These people, Mayans, said this would culminate in 2012, and that the culmination would be as a result of a blue star. Let me show you NASA's Spaceship Telescope, and there it is. That's Myra, a massive blue star, screaming across the universe at 291,000 miles per hour. What fits this in with Eta Carina and supernova 1987 is the fact that scientists say again, we've never seen anything like this. But now, this is how the prophecy goes, which specifically references 2012. That time is not far off. It will come when the Susquehanna blue star Kachina dances in the plaza and removes his mask. He represents a blue star, far off and yet invisible, which will make its appearance soon. I'm interested. The most interesting time, not based on ancient prophecies written thousands of years ago, but based on the synchronicity that appears to be fulfilling some prophecies. When this famous prophecy speaks of a blue star being the sign of the great earth change in 2012, and a blue star appears as a shocking appearance to scientists, then it's time for us to pay attention, because your world is going to change. It's nothing to be afraid of. What you have to be afraid of is the people that are running things here now. The people that are, atomic bombs and threatening and blowing things up and killing and all of this stuff. That's what you have to be afraid of. You don't have to be afraid. This is nature. This is God changing the course, correcting the course. But it's time to pay attention to this. In order to be focused on this great change, we have to be attentive to everything. No matter how insignificant it appears, nothing should be passed off as unimportant. And so I'm going to show you something insignificant, but something I don't want to pass off on, and I wanted to share it to you. And so I speak of Udambara. Udambara. Udambara is a flower. It's spoken of in Buddhist scripture like this. According to etymology and Hulin's Yin Yi, and Buddhist scripture from China's Tang Dynasty says in the early 9th century, Udambara appears in heaven. It does not belong to the human world. Only the mighty virtue of a reincarnating Tathagata or the appearance of the noble king of Falun would cause Udambara to appear in the human world. So what was interesting to me is that if Udambara were to appear again, this is connected to a prophecy that talks about this coming, this second coming. Well, so Jesus, the Christians call it Jesus, they call it Tathagata, or whatever. But it's talking about the coming of a new mind, a new consciousness, something entirely different than we have experienced before, a change, the return of a different force to earth. Call it what you will. There is reference there to what is a higher being, a higher mind making itself known on the planet Earth. And what about Udambara? Let's look. Udambara flowers blossoms in Fremont, California. First time the legendary flowers are seen in North America. Udambara, a legendary flower that is believed to blossom once every 3 millennia to symbolize the arrival of the noble king of Fulan, the laurel wheel, was seen in Fremont, California on August 8th. This is the first such finding in North America. The extremely rare flowers were seen on the leaves of an oleander tree on the side of a Warm Springs Boulevard in Fremont, about 150 feet south of the Starlight Way crossing. Now, it's not the only place where it's been seen, but it's been seen in the United States and California. Okay? And we'll go here. The tiny, delicate flowers are white in color and grow suspended on thread-like stalks. The stems are slimmer than human hair. Altogether, Udambara appeared on 8 leaves. Some leaves had 30 little buds on them. Some had 40, 50, or 60 buds. This is Udambara. Do you see them here? You see? The little white. Now, is it a sign? It's here. And as you see with the science report, it only blooms once every 3 millennia. What's that, 1,000 years, 3,000 years? And so now you got this, you got the blue star, you got Eta Carini, you got supernova, you got kids who are telling you where they were before they were born and all of this stuff. And everybody's going to church and reciting something else. So it's not only in Fremont, California, but you know, if you go home, you can look up Udumbara, Udambara, you can read about it yourself. There was one story that I found this week. I don't know what time did I start this?
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Well, I'll do this in 3 minutes. But you know, I thought this was a wonderful story because this was a religious person who was a magnificently wonderful person. And I hate to point out religious people who are really wonderful. But this person was. And now we find out that the person really wasn't very religious at all. Mother Teresa. And the stories are about Mother Teresa's faith struggle, saying that she really didn't have any faith. And why? How could she have any faith? Look what she worked among. I mean, it had to be crashing through her head. I'm helping these people that the rest of the world, and they're all going to church. They're all in church, and these people are starving and dying, and she couldn't deal with it. See? And of course, the church tries, she was trying to find herself and all that stuff. But she said, and I'll quote from the book, I have no faith. I dare not utter the words and thoughts that crowd in my heart